Running a business is hard enough, but your accounting shouldn't be. For more than 20 years, MKJ Accounting Consultants have helped individuals and businesses across Australia with expert tax, accounting, finance, and superannuation services. From tax returns, lodgements and reporting, to cash flow analysis, budgeting and business advice, MKJ takes a proactive, hands-on approach so you can focus on growing your business, not chasing deadlines. So no matter what your accounting needs, MKJ has you covered. Call MKJ Accounting on 02 9317 2799 or visit mkj.com.au to find out more today. There's no Ouzo Talk without a bottle of Ouzo, which is why we love the Greek providore. Get a real taste of the very best produce that Greece has to offer. From olive oils and delicious artisan sweets to unique spirits, earthy herbs and memorable wines. Visit thegreekprovidore.com.au to see their delicious range. The Greek Providore, proud sponsors of the Ouzo Talk podcast.
Sound is.
Nick Athanasiou, this has been a slow burn to get to where we are today, but I am very excited about the guest that we have in the room because, mate, this guy rose to, well, at least to my attention during the height of the economic crisis in Greece. And he was seen to be right at the center of it, all over the news, and basically in a fight with the European Union. What are your recollections, I guess, of this man?
Well, he definitely stood out through the crisis that we had, and he definitely challenged the European Union leaders as well, which honestly, I want to get to the bottom of this. I want to hear his version as well, because we do hear what the media says. The media can be biased, and like I say in many other episodes, I don't know what to believe anymore when I listen to media and read the print.
Yes.
So how good is it having him here in the room?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, I'm going to introduce him now. Obviously, we're very thankful for him being here. And our guest was Greece's finance minister during one of the most turbulent political periods in the country's modern history, stepping into office in 2015 at the height of the debt crisis and intense negotiations with Europe's lenders. During his tenure, he in many ways became the central figure in talks that would shape Greece's economic future, attracting global attention for his approach to austerity, debt restructuring and negotiations. An economist by training, he continues to influence international debate through writing, teaching and political activism, offering sharp critiques of global financial systems and the way power operates within them. His ideas have sparked controversy, admiration and sustained discussion well beyond Greece's borders. His latest book, Raise Your Soul, centers on the theme of resistance, telling the story of the last 100 years through the voices of 5 remarkable women. Joining us in the distillery today is Yanis Varoufakis. Welcome to Ouzo Talk.
Thank you so much for having me.
It is an absolute honor to have you in the room.
The honor is all mine, folks.
Awesome to have you here.
Absolutely. And I mean, you're back in this country now. Obviously, you've spent quite a bit of time in Australia over the years, haven't you?
I'm an Australian citizen.
Are you really?
I'm a Sydneysider. I spent 12 years here. My daughter lives here.
Yes.
You can get the boy out of Australia, but not Australia out of the boy. So, you know.
There you go. So you're a true Aussie.
I'm one of yours, whether you like it or not.
Great. Do you have a football team you follow in Australia?
No.
You don't?
No.
Okay.
No. This is not football, is it?
Rugby league.
Yeah, well, I lived in England before I lived in Australia for,
Right. So you're
another
well,
10
you're
years.
To it.
And
do you have a Premier League team?
Liverpool.
Oh, thank you.
Go Reds. Go Reds.
By the way, at the time of recording, they were playing this morning. What ended up happening?
No idea.
Okay, we'll check that
We'll
afterwards.
have to fact check that.
Anyway, well, look, without any further ado, let's get into the episode properly. What do you reckon, Nick?
Definitely, mate. Let's have a drink.
Okay.
Okay.
Yamas.
By the way, we're drinking tsikoudya so that our audience knows.
Yes, we do.
Fantastic.
We'll talk about it in a sec.
So, Nick, what is that tsikoudya?
Oh, how good is that?
That is good. But
is.
we have to say it's very early in the morning, which is this is a Cretan tradition. You're part Cretan or wholly Cretan?
Well, both my grandfathers come from the Rethymno area. Mm-hmm. And I believe that this Tsikudia comes from the Rethymno area. So this is quite fitting.
Fantastic.
Definitely. Well, it's 35N, Tom.
Yes.
Our great sponsors, the Greek Providor, have provided us with these amazing goodies. But we have in the Tsikudia the Shiraz version.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so it's going down a treat.
You can't go wrong with it.
Yeah, breakfast of champions.
We're showing our alcoholism in all its glory this morning. But thank you to the Greek Providor, greekprovidor.com.au, for jumping on board and being part of Ouzo Talk over the last few years. Thank you very much. And obviously MKJ Accounting as well. Thank you so much, guys.
Definitely.
mkj.com.au for all your accounting needs. Make sure you're contacting Chris Pappas and getting your stuff sorted through there.
Right. Well done. Thank you, Chris.
Wonderful. Well, Yanni, you've just mentioned that you are, both your grandfathers are from Crete. Do you feel Cretan? Is that spiritually, is that where your allegiances lie?
Strangely enough, I do.
Yeah.
I'm what we call in Greek pseudokritikos, right? Because I didn't grow up there.
Yes.
But I have to say that when I go to Crete, I feel that I'm at home.
Yes.
And interestingly, my daughter, who is a Sydneysider, Xenia, and she's been to Crete 5, 6, 7 times with us. She feels that too.
Yeah.
And she feels Cretan, which is just goes to show that there's something in the air, in the soil, in the sea salt of the place.
Yeah. So I understand was it your father that was born in Egypt?
Yes, his father came from Crete through Leros, ended up in Egypt. And there he married a French-Greek woman, and my father was born and raised in Cairo. Mm-hmm. And he left Cairo for the first time when he was 21. He had this romantic notion of studying physics and chemistry in Athens because he needed to connect with his Greek roots.
Right.
Having never spent any serious time. He had only been once on a holiday in 1930-something.
Wow.
To Greece. And he landed right at the end of the First Civil War, μετά τα Δεκεμβριανά. And lo and behold, within a few months, he was incarcerated and spent 4 years in concentration camps.
Wow.
Sorry, in Greece you're talking about?
Yes, of course. Makronisos.
Okay.
So what was the reason for his incarceration?
Well, the reason was when he arrived, and he was a student of chemistry, actually, there was this very short period of time when the ultra-right, the Hittites, fascists really,
yes,
and the communists were instructed by their leadership to find some kind of common ground, because there was an attempt at a détente between the Communist Party and the government for a few months. So my father arrives like a UFO that lands from Cairo in the midst of this very tense situation. And he was, such a strange fruit that at some point he made friends with all sorts of people. The university leader of EPON, the Communist Youth Organization, and of the Hittites, the fascist organization, approached him together. Oh. And they said to him, they made him an offer he couldn't refuse. They said, look, we want you to run for the presidency of the Students' Union, because both of us can tolerate you because you're a UFO. And my father liked the idea of being a unifying figure.
Sure.
A few weeks later, so he got elected. With a crashing majority, of course, because he had both the right and the left supporting him. And, a few weeks later, you have to remember, this is 1945. This is famine period.
Yes.
Students were fainting in the amphitheater from hunger.
Wow. So just after the World War.
Yeah. And the First Civil War. Okay. So it was, a double whammy. So what happened was the university authorities doubled student tuition fees in the midst of this famine. And my father thought, okay, my job is to represent the student interests.
Sure.
So he went to see the rector. And the rector was incensed that he had the audacity, very polite. My father was just, the most sensitive of souls. Yeah. His mother, who was French, had instructed him to the French Enlightenment. He grew up with Jean-Jacques Rousseau, with Voltaire, with Mozart, that kind of upbringing in Cairo, right?
Right.
As I said, a UFO. And anyway, very politely, he said to him that this is not a time to raise tuition fees, that students need to be supported, blah, 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 blah. The rector said, I will take this into advisement, under consideration. He comes out as he's, a couple of days later, as he's leaving the chemistry school to go home, two thugs grab him. They were police, secret police. They bundle him up, put him in a car, in a jeep, and take him to police station, where they put a hood over his head and beat him up for about an hour. My father is absolutely incensed. He actually doesn't know what's happening to him. And a few hours later, they take him to the man in charge at the police station, who was really the good cop and very nice, and starts apologizing on behalf of the brutes that brutalized him. Apologies of the sort that these days you can't get good people to serve the police. They are all from the eparchia and they are all brutes and all that. And you're a good boy. I can see now on your file here that you come from Cairo, from a very good family. You have to go home. I'll organize a car to take you home. But sign this first. And that was a declaration of denouncing communists and their fellow travelers.
Right.
Wow.
And my father says, sir, I'm not a Muslim. I'm not a Buddhist. But if you asked me to denounce Islam and Buddhism, I wouldn't do it because it's none of your business what I believe. And similarly, I'm not a communist, but I'm not going to denounce communists. And the result was 4 years in a constitution.
Wow.
For a signature.
Wow. Okay.
That's the long and the short of it.
Yeah.
Wow. So, I mean, I was reading your bio and you mentioned basically that, you are a product of a period post-Civil War leading into the Ghouta. How does that as context affect how you grew up personally?
Well, you know what? I grew up under awful circumstances, because my father, again, in 1967, when the junta arrived at our doorstep, 4 o'clock in the morning, 21st of April, 1967. My father is, at that stage, he's the director of quality control at the largest steel company. So he had actually made it. Right. My mother was a biochemist working for the military hospital of Athens, Nimitz. The secret police break down our door and abduct my father in the middle of the night, just because he was on a list. He was on the blacklist. So we experienced all that, the financial pressures of having a father that was incarcerated. My uncle, my mother's brother, was tortured and court-martialed for resisting the junta, even though he was actually the CEO of Siemens, Greece.
Wow.
So to answer your question, the first thing that happens to a young boy as a result of these experiences is he gets politicized from the age of 6. Because, you live politics. It's not a theoretical concept, right? But what I need to stress here is that I was blessed with the best childhood anyone could possibly have had. Because even though there was adversity, my mother was tearing her hair out for, when my uncle, her beloved brother, was being tortured, and there was a serious possibility that he would be executed. Serious possibility. Wow. When you're court-martialed for treason, it's not a laughing matter. Nevertheless, I was having enormous fun. I mean, I remember visiting my uncle with my mum in prison and smuggling out and in little, tiny pieces of paper with messages. And for me, it was like a peripetia. It was an adventure. And all I have left in my memory banks from that period was how exciting the whole thing was.
Wow.
And also the sense things were bleak but hopeful. Because we knew what the enemy was. You would switch on the television and the news presenter was wearing a military uniform.
Yeah.
So you knew that you had a fascist dictatorship. You thought, okay, we get rid of them, everything's going to be good. So hope was flourishing. Yeah. And, I was blessed with a brilliant childhood in the midst of misery.
Wow. Unbelievable. I mean, I hear stories, because my mother grew up in the same period, believe it or not. Once the junta ended, what groundwork did that set in order for the next stage of your life? I mean, these are now the formative years of your life, going into your teen years and whatnot. What opportunities to flourish were brought about by the fall of that dictatorship?
As I said, I was blessed. And let me give you an example. When the junta came in 1967, I was year one, primary school, and I was in a state school. And my mother was very eager to protect me from being bullied as the child of a prisoner and all that. So something remarkable happened. The most la-di-da, haute bourgeois, expensive private school in Greece, Moraitis, which was owned by somebody called Moraitis, who used to be a left-winger in his youth, but then sold out. He married into a very rich family. He became an industrialist and so on. But he was a philologist, right? And he did his own thing. You know, he used the money that he married into in order to pursue his hobby, like you guys are pursuing your hobby here. And he bought a school. Right. And he created a very progressive school for the rich kids, aristocrats. And because he had this guilt feeling that he had abandoned the left, which he had abandoned completely, when the junta came, he created a sanctuary for about 30 of us, kids of incarcerated lefties, but completely hush-hush. So he took me in and other kids without tuition fees, and the tuition fees were very high. This is a very expensive school, right? And he did something else too. He gave sanctuary to university professors who were fired from the university by the junta.
Right.
And I had the best university professors teaching me in, high school. So I had people like Georgosopoulos, the greatest theater critic in the history of Greece. I had Kakanavatos, the most important surrealist poet, teaching me mathematics. Yeah. I had, the best historians, the best. So I had all that.
Wow.
And that continued after the junta fell. But allow me to connect with something you were saying in your introduction. I will take you now to the rooms where crucial decisions were being made in 2015. And you'll see how I'm going to connect this with these experiences.
I had a feeling this was going to happen.
But I think it's pertinent.
Yep.
There was this moment when Christine Lagarde, who is today, as we speak, the president of the European Central Bank. But back then, she was the managing director of the International Monetary Fund, which is even more powerful than the European Central Bank. She and I were talking about the state of Greece and so on. And she was confessing to me that what they were trying to push down my throat, to shove down my throat, this new credit card that they wanted us to take, under conditions that would destroy Greece, as they did destroy Greece, that I had to take it because I couldn't say no to that. I had to sign on the memorandum of understanding, they call it, the new credit card contract, right?
Sure.
And she essentially said that, I know that this is terrible for your country, but you've got to do it because your career depends on it. Wow. My career depends. As if I gave a damn about my career.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was clear that these people thought that this signature, it was something they could extract from me because I would be fearful of the consequences for me had I not signed. Little did they know that my father, for a mere signature on an inconsequential document, I mean, had he signed it, what would have happened? Nothing. Condemnation of communism. He wasn't even a communist. Yeah. He ended up in a concentration camp being tortured for 4 years. Yeah. As if, with that background, Christine Lagarde could threaten me with, a diminution in my bloody career prospects. Yeah. So I'm trying to connect the kind of upbringing I had with the idiocy that went on in Brussels and, what they considered to be a serious threat to me.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
Yeah. That's unbelievable. Crazy. So you ended up going to England, like you said. You ended up lecturing. You came to Australia for, 12 years, became a citizen. At what stage did you say, I want to get into politics?
Oh, I never wanted to get into politics. I still don't want to get into politics.
Are you kidding? But somehow you are.
Folks, you know what? The only reason why I got into politics was because our country went bankrupt. And I could see that what that would do to us.
Yeah.
Because, you hear all these stories now about Greece's recovery and all that. This is a figment of the establishment's imagination. Unfortunately, let me be very, very, very practical and very specific. Of the boys and girls that graduated from Greece's medical schools last June, 56% have left the country already.
Oh, wow.
Now, you only need to state that to realize that this is not a reproducible, viable country. Think about it. The pain and the money and the sweat and the tears that a family has to shed for their boys and girls to, graduate from high school, get the, 99.999% grade that you need to get in order to go into medical school.
Yes.
Spend 8 years being trained. And then once you're trained, you're thrown out of the country, or you're forced out of the country, and you go to El Salvador, to Germany, to Canada, to provide your medical services to a foreign health service. A country that invests so much and loses that capital, that human capital, cannot reproduce itself. So it's when I realized early on that this is what was going to happen to our country. And not just to our country. This is the reason why we have, the European Union fragmenting, the rise of fascism everywhere and so on, is because of the inane handling of the inevitable 2008 crisis, which then had as its repercussion the bankruptcy of our country.
Yes.
So when I was in Sydney in, 1995, 1996, you never heard of me. Why? Because I was very happy in my office at the Merriweather Building at the Faculty of Economics, University of Sydney, right? Writing mathematical economic papers that were intended for 20 people around the world because they were totally useless. Great fun to write. High abstract mathematical.
Yes.
I'm not academic stuff. I love doing that. It was fun. I was teaching my students and so on. And I would never have shifted out of the world towards politics. It was around 2003, 2004 that I could see that our generation was going to have its 1929 moment.
Right.
The collapse of Wall Street, which brought about the Great Depression, fascism and war.
Yes.
And I could see that this was going to happen again. And our 1929 happened again in 2008. Again, Wall Street collapses, the French and the German banks will go belly up.
What were the signs, though, that made you think this is coming now?
Okay. I'll be very specific. In 2001, because I was keeping an eye out on these, even though I was an abstract theoretical economist, global income, GDP globally for the planet, was around 50. Forget the zeros.
Yeah.
To make it easy for people to understand.
Yeah.
It was about 50. And I worked out that the value of the derivatives, the derivative trades, that is the bets of the financiers on financiers, was 70. 50 global income, 70 the bets of Wall Street. That's 2001. By 2003, global income, because of globalization and all that, right, had gone up substantially to about 70, from 50 to 70.
Yep.
And the size of the bets of the financial sector had gone up from 70 to 750. Okay? Now you can see this chasm. This is a bubble that's going to burst.
Yeah.
And I knew that, I was looking at the data and all that, and I could see that the last time we had such a huge bubble was 1929. And, our politicians, our economists, our central bankers were totally oblivious to all that. So I started writing. It was the first time I moved away from abstract mathematical economics to actually advocacy, to preparing the world. But of course, nobody listened because, of the cacophony of all that money making.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody wants to listen to a Cassandra when they're making so much money out of a bubble.
And this is a global view at this point. This is global view.
This is the United States. This is US.
Yep.
And here in Australia too.
Yep.
But primarily the United States.
Yep.
But I knew that, our country had entered the Eurozone totally naked. We were not up to it. Because think about it. The moment you enter the Eurozone, as we did in the year 2000, 1998, 1999 was the real entry into the Eurozone. Effectively, we gave up our currency and we adopted the mark, the Deutschmark, which we call the euro, but it's a Deutschmark. Okay. The moment you do that, when you have a country like Greece that has a deficit with Germany, you get Mercedes-Benzes and Volkswagens going from Germany to Greece, and you have oranges going from Greece to Germany. It's very difficult to have balanced trade when it comes to that. Yeah. So we were constantly getting into the red. Yeah. And what was happening was because the Germans had, the German corporate world, had this huge trade surplus vis-a-vis Greece, Ireland, Spain, Portugal, Australia too.
Yes.
They were accumulating lots of money. A lot of money was going to the Frankfurt banks.
Yeah.
And you know what the greatest nightmare of a banker is? To have money that they are not lending. Because the Germans didn't want to borrow that money. They had money.
Yeah.
So what ended up happening is the German banks and the German car industry and other, white goods and all that, they were selling us their products and giving us the money, the loans
to buy
it. So vendor financing.
Yeah.
Now this can't end well. If you have your own currency, this is kept in check because the German bankers are worried that, if my income is in drachmas and the drachma is falling vis-a-vis the Deutschmark, that, I won't be able to repay my Deutschmark debt using drachma. So they would slow down the rate at which they would lend me money. But when I have the Deutschmark, they are not worried about that, especially when Greeks own their own homes, collaterals. Okay? Yeah. So that bubble became huge. Now, when Deutsche Bank, when Finanzbank went belly up as a result of Wall Street, they called all the loans back. And at that point, we ended up bankrupt. And I could see that this was going to happen. And at that point, what happens is Merkel comes in. She bails out in April of 2009 the German banks to the tune of 500 billion. That is about $1 trillion Australian dollars, about thereabouts.
So just explain what you mean by bailout.
Well, it's really very simple. She receives a phone call. Remember, Angela Merkel is the Christian Democrat, Iron Maiden of German politics, who was really brutal to her own ministers, to her Minister of Health, for instance, who wanted a little bit more money for hospitals in Germany. And she was saying, no, 9, not one more Pfennig, because, we are Austerians. We are not going to be spending money. So she believed that. And then suddenly she gets this phone call, a nightmare phone call in the Chancellery. Chancellor, if we don't give our banks 500 billion today, they will go bankrupt and the ATMs will not function tomorrow. She doesn't know why this is happening. She doesn't understand why. How can it be? They had such huge profits until yesterday. How can they need 500 billion? You know why they needed 500 billion? Because Deutsche Bank and all those idiotic, criminally insane bankers were actually betting on American subprime mortgages. Gigantic. Do you know what the black hole of Deutsche Bank was in April 2009 in Germany? 50 times German national income. One bank owed more than 50 times the national income of the whole of Germany.
Wow.
It had gone completely. So bailout is...
So here's a blank check.
Here's a blank...
$500 billion check.
She did that.
And did the banks have to pay that back?
No, of course not. They never paid it back.
So it's the people's money.
Of course.
Taxes.
That's what a bailout is. It's socialism for bankers.
Yeah, right.
But didn't Greece get bailouts as well?
Wait. No, of course not. What happened was this. She did that. She didn't know why she was doing it. She actually, her finance minister put it to me, Schäuble, it was like drinking Reconium.
Yeah.
They didn't know why they were doing it. They were told that if we don't do that, there will be no ATMs tomorrow morning. So they did. 8 months later, another phone call comes. We need another 500 billion for them. Why? We just gave them 500 billion. Well, because they had lent a lot of money to all the countries, vendor financing, we explained that before, Ireland, Portugal, to the states of Ireland, to the governments of Ireland, and of course Greece. And Greece was the first one to topple because it was, the weakest link.
Right.
And if we let the Greek government go bust, then the Portuguese government will go bust. It will be a domino, then the Irish. And then we will need 2 trillion for our bankers.
Okay.
So we need to bail them out again, our bankers. And she said, 9, I'm not doing this. I'm not going back to my own members of parliament to say that we need another 500 billion for our banks. So they presented this as a bailout for Greece, solidarity with Greece. Now, when you have your Minister of Health, you're the German Chancellor, your members of parliament, and you have denied them funding for hospitals, for kindergartens, for schools, for years. You played the role of the Austerian Iron Maiden. And you say to them, now I'm going to give 120 billion to the Greek state. They say, hang on, what are you doing there? What about my constituents? What about our people? So she had to find a narrative that would convince them. It was all about bailing out Deutsche Bank again. It was not about bailing out Greece, right? Yep. So she comes up with this idea that the Greeks are lazy, they are disgusting, they jeopardize through their spendthrift behavior of the European Union, but we are Europeans and we need to show solidarity and show them some tough love. So we will give them the money, but we will crush them at the same time. And that's how she managed to push this through the Bundestag, the federal parliament, in order to bail out the German banks a second time. What happened was they gave 120 billion, the largest loan in history. Mm-hmm. That was a loan, it wasn't a bailout. Yeah. They gave it to the Greek people, to the Greek government, on conditions
to give back to the banks.
And all of it went to Deutsche Bank and some French banks, Société Générale and BNP Paribas. So it was a bailout for the banks disguised as a bailout for Greece. Greece was never bailed out. And instead of bailing out Greece, we had to suffer 40% reductions in wages, in pensions, the complete annihilation of our health system, of our schooling system, and so on. And the point I was making back then, I was telling people like George Papandreou, who was the prime minister then, don't take it. Yeah. Go bankrupt. When you're bankrupt, you should own up to it. If you, imagine a friend of yours were to say, I'm going through a difficult patch and I can't repay my mortgage. But there is the Commonwealth Bank that wants to give me a credit card from which to draw money to pay my, for a while, to pay my mortgage. If you're a good friend, you say, don't do it. Just don't do it. Lose the house. Doesn't matter. Just don't take a credit card by which to finance. And because, when the credit card, this is called the bailout. The credit card was a bailout. A supposed bailout, it will run out. Lo and behold, it ran out within 8 months because it all went to the French government. And then they had to have a second one because, when you max out one credit card, you get a second one to pretend that you're repaying the first one. And I got elected to stop this process of sinking Greece into a debt prison on conditions of reducing the national income from which you would have to repay those debts. So this is why I was elected. That was my... You asked me why I got into politics. Yeah. Because none of them were doing that. They were taking one credit card after the other. And at some point, my wife, then I said to me, look, you have to try to do this. Yeah. Okay. And this is why I went to Brussels and said, no.
Yeah. Okay. So if you weren't, if in your view is don't take the bailouts or the loans, as we described it, you wanted Greece to move out of the euro? Was that the next step? No?
Well, what happens? If needs be.
So if Greece becomes bankrupt, what does that mean then?
Well, bankruptcy and capitalism are synonymous, folks. Bankruptcy is to capitalism what hell is to Christianity. Yeah. Unpleasant, but essential. You can't have the Christian faith without hell.
Sure. But there'd be consequences, wouldn't there?
Of course there would be consequences.
So what would they be?
The consequences would be that we would be cut out of the financial markets. We wouldn't be able to borrow again. We would have to live within our means. Whatever receipts the Greek state had, it would have to use those and nothing more in order to pay pensions, in order to do stuff. We would, suffer the consequences of this, but we would be able to rebuild.
How long will that take?
2 years.
Well, I guess the question is...
But it doesn't matter. It gives you a chance to rebuild. Yeah. Whereas if you take one credit card after the other, look at Greece today.
But you think Greece would have been vulnerable with other countries, like, for example, coming to invade it or so forth?
Why?
Because they're vulnerable, they're weak. People want the islands.
Guys, we don't talk about people, talk about Turkey.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to invade Greece except Turkey. So can we call a spade a spade?
Call it Turkey. So if Turkey
the Bulgarians are not going to invade Greece.
If Turkey sees a weak Greece, we got no money, we're weak, we owe money, we're in debt, people are depressed. Yes, sure, Turkey will just walk in and take it, wouldn't they?
Well, folks, the result of taking those credit cards weakened us more than going bankrupt. Because when you are given a bailout, which doesn't go to you, it goes to the bankers.
Sure.
And they impose upon you a GST of 24%.
Yeah.
You are killing the fabric of your social economy. Yeah. That is making you more vulnerable to any external threat. than not taking the loan and keeping. My policy was to bring down GST from, it was 22% when I moved to the ministry, to bring it down to 15%. Bring down corporate tax for small businesses from 29% to 10%. For medium-sized businesses to 15%, and leave it at 29% for the cartels.
So you're saying that is the lesser of two evils.
That, absolutely. And this is what you should be doing. You don't need to be a lefty to understand that. Even a neoliberal understands that. What we did, which is to... Do you know that in Greece, what happened, what they wanted me to sign, which I wouldn't sign, this is why I resigned, the next guy signed it. Think about it. If anybody is listening who has any connection to businesses, you have a small business, a medium-sized business, think of this, of what they imposed upon us. They imposed not only 24% GST, VAT, but 100% prepayment of next year's corporate tax as estimated by the tax office this year. So let's say you have to pay the taxman or woman 100,000 in your tax return.
Yeah.
That immediately became 200,000 because they calculated that you would have to pay another 100,000 next year, and you had to prepay this year. You do that to a country that you want to destroy.
Yeah. Okay.
And the result is, if I were Erdogan in Ankara watching, now what do I fear more? A Greece that goes bankrupt and doesn't impose these taxes, or a Greece that doesn't go bankrupt in name and destroys its social economy? Turkey and Erdogan loved what the powers that be did in Greece because it really did weaken Greece enormously.
So you're elected to Parliament under Syriza Alexis Tsipras. You begin saying to your Prime Minister at the time, my advice is we should go bankrupt and we should take this path. How was that received when you started to say that and you started telling them about your plan to effectively take on the EU?
Well, Tom, the only reason why he gave me the ministry was because I had said this to him 3 years before he gave me the ministry.
Right.
It's not something I said to him after I became minister.
Sure.
I mean, I was very clear. By the way, I never wanted to be minister, and I never imagined I would be Minister of Finance. From 2010, when we went bankrupt and Papandreou put us in this debtors prison with the first bailout, in inverted commas, I was talking to all sorts of different politicians, from the right, even to Kyriakos Mitsotakis, people from the right, people from PASOK, to all of them, including Alexis Tsipras, because I was trying to take a non-partisan position as an economist and to say to them, listen, there is a national interest here. I don't give a damn about your political infighting. We must not take a credit card because that will condemn our country ad infinitum. I was talking to all of them. After the PASOK and New Democracy coalition was formed in 2011 and they went for the second credit card, they stopped talking to me because it was part and parcel of their essential defection to the financial cabal that put our country in debtors prison. The only politician who kept talking to me was Tsipras. I didn't trust him very much, I have to tell you. But he was interested in what I was saying. And I was it wasn't just chat. I was providing him with report after report, analysis after analysis, blueprints of, what he should do if he were ever be elected. And every single one of them included going bankrupt, formally, recognizing, embracing, loving our bankruptcy and turning it into a strength. Because, when you owe the bank $3,000, the bank has got you by the testicles, if you're a man, or the ovaries if you're a woman. If you owe 300 billion, you have power.
Yep.
Right?
Right.
And you have to use this power for your people and not to take another credit card. And also, he was asking me questions like, so what happens if they shut down our banks? So I had created, I had put together a contingency plan for, moves that we should take to prevent the European Central Bank from shutting our banks down. And another one, what happened if they did shut our banks down? It was an electronic payment system that would allow us to have payments without banks. And we were preparing for war, in other words. And it was because I had presented them with all these blueprints, which I was sharing with other politicians at the same time.
Right.
At some point in November 2014, he asked to see me. Back then I was living with my wife in Austin, Texas. I was teaching there at the University of Texas. And he asked to see me, so I flew to Greece, and he and his team had studied all those blueprints, and they said to me that an election is in the air. There's probably going to be a snap poll, and we'll probably win, and we want to implement this.
Wow.
And I said, great, I'll help you. What do you want me to do? And he said, no, you don't understand. We believe in this blueprint, but we can't implement it ourselves. So you have to take the finance ministry. I thought, oh, shit. Right? But, when you open your mouth and you talk the talk, at some point you have to walk the walk. Yeah. And it was a moral duty at that point to say yes, very reluctantly. I was not a member of the party.
Yeah.
I was not in agreement with the economic policies of the party. I knew that the party would be against me. My own party, the people that would put me in the Ministry of Finance. Yeah. Called my wife, I remember. She was still in Austin, outside the apartment of one of the very close colleagues of Tsipras. After they had made the offer, I went out, pretending that I went out for a smoke, even though I don't smoke. And I called Danai and said, what do we do? Do we take this or not? She said, they will take us to the cleaners, because if you succeed in anything, they will claim the glory. If you fail, they will lump all the blame on us, on you. But I think you should take it, because I'm not going to be able to stand you in the next decades wondering what would have happened if you had said yes.
Sure.
So that's how I entered politics.
Wow.
This is a very long-winded answer to the question, why did you get into politics?
Yeah. Unbelievable.
So that was
November 2014.
24.
And then in January, a couple of months later, there was the election and we were elected.
Wow.
So you enter politics. You are now tasked with probably the most unwanted job in politics globally.
Indeed.
At this point. I remember you walking into those meetings wearing a leather jacket.
No, that's not true. I never wore a leather jacket in those meetings. This is the media.
On the way in.
It wasn't
probably on the way to hotels.
The point I'm trying to make is you're the alternative in all of this. Everyone's wearing suits and ties and whatnot, and here's you walking in with a plan.
But you have to remember that the mafiosi, the serious mafiosi, wear the best suits.
Of course.
Those
That's
people,
not a slight, by the way.
No, it's a fact.
Yeah.
The best Italian suits are worn by the mafiosi.
Absolutely.
And all those people who put our country in debtor's prison wore ties and suits, and they were very respectable. Look, I didn't want to be a phony. I wanted to wear what I wore at the University of Sydney and the University of Cambridge.
wanted to be yourself.
Imagine if I had suddenly transformed myself into something else just because I became minister. I mean, what the hell? Why?
So my question is around, you show up in the midst of this crisis, and everyone in the EU is looking at you. And I think for a period there, they were genuinely scared about what was about to happen. What were they saying to you in the background? I mean, we all saw those meetings with Göran Dijsselbloem, for example, where you...
By the way, I wrote all this up in a book called Adults in the Room, right? It's 700 pages. Anybody wants to consult, the sordid details, day by day. This is in Adults in the Room. And
I believe there's a movie about it too.
Yeah, and not only is it a movie,
but the book's a lot better.
It's always, of course, if you've written it. But I have to say that I was very deeply honored, because the movie was made by my childhood hero of directors, Costa Gavras.
Oh, wow.
To have Costa Gavras in his 80s come to you and say, I want to make a movie out of your book.
Amazing.
Right? I mean, but to answer your question, look, I'll add the question to your question and answer both together.
Sure.
After the event, after my resignation and all the events that followed, journalists who've been interviewing me have been asking me the same questions that you are asking, and the additional question, but Mr. Varoufakis, how can it be that all these people are wrong and you are right? And the answer I give them, and this is also the answer to your question, is that not one of them told me that I was wrong. Not one. And here I'm going to mention names. Wolfgang Schäuble, the federal finance minister of Germany, my greatest foe and the greatest foe of Greece, the man who crushed Greece, never once said to me that I was wrong.
Yeah.
I explain in the book how in the first few meetings he would just refuse to talk to me, to engage with me.
Really?
At all. He refused to shake my hand when I first met him in his office.
Wow.
He was extremely, toxic with me. But meeting after meeting after meeting, we started actually more or less liking each other while in total opposition to one another. By the end of that 6-month period, something remarkable happened, folks. I was in his office in Berlin, and he was pushing me to sign. And I was trying to explain to him why I was not signing. And he was not engaging with the arguments at all. He never, this was his strategy. Never engage, never tell me why I'm wrong, or even that I'm wrong. He was only saying, sign.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Running a business is hard enough, but your accounting shouldn't be. For more than 20 years, MKJ Accounting Consultants have helped individuals and businesses across Australia with expert tax, accounting, finance, and superannuation services. From tax returns, lodgements and reporting, to cash flow analysis, budgeting and business advice, MKJ takes a proactive, hands-on approach so you can focus on growing your business, not chasing deadlines. So no matter what your accounting needs, MKJ has you covered. Call MKJ Accounting on 02 9317 2799 or visit mkj.com.au to find out more today. There's no Ouzo Talk without a bottle of Ouzo, which is why we love the Greek Providor. Get a real taste of the very best produce that Greece has to offer. From olive oils and delicious artisan sweets to unique spirits, earthy herbs and memorable wines. Visit thegreekprovidor.com.au to see their delicious range. The Greek Providor, proud sponsors of the Ouzo Talk podcast.
That thing. And at some point,
sign for the credit cards.
Sign for the credit cards. Yeah. At some point, when we were discussing the whole situation in Europe and so on, we more or less agreed that we were in the dead end as Europe, not as Greece,
right,
or Germany. And you can see the deindustrialization of Germany in Europe. Europe is now a laughing stock in the world as a result of those policies and those signatures that they were demanding of finance ministers. The reason why I became so prominent was because I was the only finance minister who was saying no. Anyway, at some point, I say, Wolfgang, you know that I respect you, right? I disagree with everything you're saying, and so do you, but I respect you because you've been in this business for 40 years. I've been in this business for 4 months. Can I ask you the following? Could we, for 10 minutes, pretend that we're not finance ministers? And that, I'm here with an elder statesman seeking his advice. Don't tell me what to do. I'm seeking your advice. Can we do this for 10 minutes? And he smiled. He said, yes, let's do it.
Well done.
And I said, okay, I have a very simple question for you. If you were me, would you sign this? You know everything there is to know. Would you sign it if you were me? And he did something that I will always appreciate. He looked outside the window for 2 minutes in very studied silence. Those 2 minutes felt like 2 centuries for me, right?
Yeah.
And then he turns around and he looks at me in the eye and says, as a patriot, I wouldn't. So that's the answer to people saying, how can they all be wrong and you can be right? Christine Lagarde, she's first meeting we had, I went in there fully prepared with my arguments, with my figures, with my statistics, to argue that, we owed the Troika, our lenders, we owed them something like 200 billion, 210 billion by that time, in a country that had 190 billion income, bankruptcy.
Yep.
And I said to her, look, if you simply keep giving us these credit cards, all that happens, under conditions of shrinking our income, the gap between our debt and our income is going to be increasing. And I started giving ideas of what we could do instead so that we could pay more of our debts back, not less. Because, if you ask, the only way of them getting their money back was to stop the austerity so that we can grow the economy again and reduce tax rates.
Sure.
And she stops me in the midst of my short presentation and she said, Yanis, you're right. I said, okay, that was easy. She said, and then she criticizes me from my left of politics. She said, because I was asking for 50 billion to be written off.
Right.
Of the 210. And she said, no, we need to write off at least 100 billion. There's no future for Greece if we don't do that.
Right.
Okay.
I said, okay, but that was easy.
Positive.
That was my 5th day in the ministry.
Yeah.
I said, I can resign now, right?
Job's done.
Okay? But then immediately she
Yeah.
added, but Yanis, you have to understand that we have invested so much political capital in this program, in these credit cards, that we can't go back now. And your career depends on signing. Okay?
Yeah.
And then I said to her, look, Christine, I don't give a damn about my career. I only give a damn about the promise I made to the Greek people. Because don't confuse me with somebody who gives a damn about being a minister.
Yeah.
And that's when they knew that they were in trouble. Because if you don't want to be minister and you treat it as a chore, like taking the rubbish out at night, anybody who loves doing it, they need the shrink. But you do it because somebody has to take the rubbish out.
Yeah.
That's how you should see your ministry. Right? That's how I saw it. And they knew that they were in trouble. Whereas with all the other ministers that coveted the ministry and whose greatest nightmare was losing it, they had them.
What mistakes do you think you would have made or you did make during the crisis, and what would you do different today?
Lots of mistakes. But nothing crucial in terms of the overall objective. Two mistakes that I made. One, I became minister on the 27th of January. I immediately went to London and talked to financiers, made these proposals about debt restructuring and so on. Immediately, the Greek stock exchange jumped by 13%. The shares of the banks went up 22%. And then the next day, the European Central Bank pulls the liquidity plug from Greek banks in order to bring everything down again. They were conducting financial terrorism against us. I'm a finance minister.
Yeah.
In the middle of a crisis, I push the stock exchange up, the banks up, and here's the central bank bringing them down. The central bank is supposed to, it exists to do the opposite, to support, stability.
Wow.
So I should have known then that there's no sense in negotiating with these people. I should have simply declared that we are going to stop our repayments. We're going to prepare for capital controls to prevent flight of whatever capital was left in Greece. Instead, what I tried to do, because I was just too much in good faith, I struggled for 3 weeks. I wasted 3 weeks, through crucial weeks, negotiating with them an extension of our program for 3 months to give them and us a chance to negotiate in good faith. And that I won. On the 20th of February, we struck a deal to extend it by 3 months and to negotiate. I was hoping that we could use those 3 months in order to prepare the final battle.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, my Prime Minister used those 3 months in order to prepare his capitulation. So that was a mistake. I should not have done that. I should have gone straight into the battle. Big mistake. But of course, with what I knew at the time, it was difficult to recommend. I wanted to show good faith to the world. That was a mistake. That's one error. The second one was I was not sufficiently forthcoming to the Greek people. I didn't tell them the truth of what was being said inside these rooms. Why? Because of the strategy or tactic of creating space for a 3-month period for good faith negotiations, once I had made that mistake, I made the second mistake of wanting to prevent a flight of deposits from the banks during those 3 months. And in order to prevent that bank run, essentially, I didn't tell the Greek people that I was being threatened with being thrown out of the euro, because that would have precipitated an even faster bank run.
Sure.
So in the end, I ended up obfuscating what was going on in those meetings. I didn't prepare our population for the rupture. And so these two mistakes I would not have repeated with hindsight.
Yeah. I want to ask you about the referendum that happened. That referendum has gone down in infamy in terms of the result. Is being the catch cry. What were the discussions happening around that in the party rooms when the result came through?
Oh, the interesting part precedes this whole thing by a couple of months.
Right.
The referendum, to remind our audience, happened on the 5th of July. It was around the end of March when I started realizing that my prime minister was trying to surrender to the Troika. And at that point, Nick and Tom, I and my wife, the only discussion that we were having, the few hours we were together, between 2 in the morning and 4 in the morning, that was the only time I was at home.
Wow.
When should I resign? Today or tomorrow?
Wow.
That was a conversation between us.
Yeah.
And because I could see that Tsipras was about to fold his stand and defect to the other side. Now, the people out there didn't know that. The people out there looked at us, Tsipras and me, as a united team, representing their interests for the first time, making them proud. Not again, but for the first time. And we had enormous popular support, 70-75% approval ratings. I mean, unbelievable. I mean, we were only elected with 36%. So we had 70-75%. We were extremely popular as a united team fighting the good fight on behalf of the many.
Yeah.
Imagine if I were to get out the next morning and say I'm resigning because Tsipras is about. I couldn't prove that he was about to defect. And at the back of my mind, I had the doubt that I was right. Maybe he would, stand his ground at the last moment. Yeah. So I decided I was going to stay there until I had absolute proof that he was defecting. And that starts in March, April. And every day is a complete agony. You see, I don't mind going into battle for my people. Even if, the slings and arrows that come from the enemy are very painful. That's great fun. It's a privilege. The terrible thing is to know that your own general is working for the other side, is in negotiations with the other side to defect and not being able to tell your troops. So I could see that he was doing that. By the end of June, I saw what he was proposing to them, and I was completely in disagreement with that. So suddenly I was no longer the finance minister because he was proposing all the things, he was accepting everything that we were discussing before, the credit cards, the 24% GST and the huge tax rates, and further reductions in pensions that would have depleted aggregate demand and would have made us go deeper into the black hole. But I was waiting because I knew that they wouldn't let him surrender. They wanted to drag him through the mud.
Right.
So even when he said yes to everything, they would up the ante and ask for even more in order to push him into a corner, to resign, to do something that would humiliate him. And I was hoping that at some point his dignity would stand up and say, bugger that, no. And I wanted to be next to him when and if that happened. But it wasn't happening. So on the 25th of June, we were in Brussels. It's clear that they are humiliating him. He has said yes to everything, and they still were dragging their feet. And our banks were being depleted, and we could scarcely make pensions at the end of the month. It was a complete nightmare. But I was there, standing by him to the last moment. And he gathers us in a room and says, I've tried everything. I've given them whatever they want, and they're saying no. So I'm going to put it to the Greek people. And when in the end, they gave him an awful agreement, which was not an agreement really. It was something that, had he accepted that, it would have been even worse than bankruptcy, without any write-offs. They gave him an offer that he couldn't accept. Right. In order to humiliate him, right? Because this is what you do to people who lose their spine. And he said, I'm going to take this agreement to the Greek people and recommend that they say no. And I said, okay, that's what we will tell the Greek people. I was the only one who spoke in the room. There were about 10 of us in Brussels, in a hotel room, large hotel and suite. And I said, comrades, between us now, are we staging this referendum to win it or to lose it? And he didn't respond. The deputy prime minister, Varoufakis, turned around and says, don't you understand? It's our way out. What he meant was, they were hoping that yes would win, no would win, the Troika would win. Yeah. And then he would say, okay, I'm a Democrat. I said no.
We have a mandate.
But we have a mandate to accept, so I'll sign.
Yeah.
And I agreed with him. I also thought we would lose it. I thought we would lose the referendum because I knew that they would shut down the banks. People wouldn't be able to access their money on Monday, on Tuesday, on Wednesday, on Thursday. Even though I knew that if the referendum were to be held instantly, we would probably get 52, 53% for OHI for no. Every day with shut banks and the media demonizing me, demonizing the OHI, the no, and because I was totally in support of OHI, whereas Tsipras said OHI, but it was very lukewarm because he wanted the yes. Right?
Sure.
I thought that by the next Sunday when the referendum would be, we would lose.
Yeah.
And just goes to show that I was in a bubble in the ministry and I was not in connection with the people out there who were getting enraged with the audacity of the creditors and of the establishment in Greece and the oligarchy. And we got a 62% thumping vote for OHI. And at that point, I allowed myself to believe that Tsipras, he's a 40-year-old man, young man. He can't betray the people. He can't betray that mandate. So I allowed myself a flicker of hope that he would be willing to, honor the vote. So my wife and I are walking through the streets of Athens to the prime ministerial residence, Maximou, and the people are out there celebrating and lifting us on their shoulders, and we are hugging and kissing, and so I am elated. It was a revolutionary moment, a moment that I think was a ray of hope for the world, not just for Greece. So we enter Maximou, and it was like entering a freezer. A freezer. People were glum, in juxtaposition to everybody else outside who was celebrating. And Tsipras, for the first time, didn't see me instantly. Every time I went in there, I would just walk into his office like friends. He was instead in meetings with the head of the Secret Service, the army, the establishment, the presidency of the Republic, the very right wing. So, my God, what is he doing here? So when I walk into his office, it was just the two of us, he was slumped on his chair. He looked depressed beyond belief. And he said to me, time to surrender. I said, exactly the opposite, time to fight and to honor the people out there. We had a 3-hour discussion. I ended up resigning. It was clear that he had already
made up his mind.
He already called Merkel and thrown the towel in. So I resigned. And the rest is us being here at Ouzo Talk.
Yeah, there you go. Wow. What a story, eh?
I mean, that's an unbelievable insight into the inner workings from behind the scenes. But I mean, how close in all of this do you think we came to a new drachma, and how far were plans in order to reach that?
You know what? If Europe was rational, they would not have allowed us. I mean, my plan was this. I had prepared the electronic payment system. So, to put it very simply, because I knew they were shutting our banks down, and we didn't control the banks. It was the Troika that controlled the banks because it was part of the European Central Bank network. I wanted us to have a capacity for people to make payments to one another, pensions to be paid outside the banking system. Yep. So I had already set up in motion the conversion of every tax file number into a reserve account for everybody who has a tax file number, businesses, people, and so on, individuals. Sure. And the idea was, I cannot give you 1,000 euros in cash because I don't control the banking system anymore. But what I will do is I will credit your tax file number with a credit, not debit, credited with 1,000. Yep. And give you a PIN number. Yep. Like you do with, Google Pay. Sure. Or your National Australia Bank app. Mm-hmm. And then if you owe Costa or Katerina some money, you can transfer it to their tax file number. And why would they accept it? Because they have to pay taxes. Mm. And they can pay me, the finance minister, through the same system. Mm. And that system would very quickly, we would have cards like credit cards, that will be the foundation of an independent autonomy. This will all be in euros. So that would buy us time. We would have a few weeks at least of liquidity until Europe, official Europe, realizes that it will cost them €1 trillion if we got out of the euro. I can give you the calculation. But, we owed 300 billion, then the central bank owed the ECB another, 250 billion. If you add it all up, it's about 1,000 billion. That's a trillion. Wow. So I don't think that Europe could have sustained that €1 trillion loss. So if they were rational, they would come to an agreement with us to have a debt restructure, not to have VAT and GST at 24%.
Sure.
We would get what we wanted. But they were testing us. They want, like in any negotiation, guys. I mean, even when you're negotiating a house.
It's like playing poker.
It's what you do at the very last moment that determines the opposite side's behavior towards you and whether they will give in. Or, give you something as opposed to nothing. So my estimation is that a rational Europe would not allow, we wouldn't have to get out of the euro. I can't give you probabilities because this is like estimating the probability that they are sane. And I can't tell you because Europeans have shown enormous evidence that they are perfectly capable of insanity. I mean, think of the Germans, how insane they were twice in the 20th century. And, they destroyed their own country out of stupidity. And they are doing it again now. With Friedrich Merz falling on all fours and licking the boots of Donald Trump. You saw that scene recently. But in order to defend your country, you have to be prepared for the worst. So I was ready to go for the drachma. The cost would be not that great because we already had suffered the costs of the crisis. We would have another slump in GDP by about 8-9%, which would not be good. But then very soon after that, if I had taken the VAT down to 15%, I had gotten rid of the huge, prepayment of corporate taxes. I had prevented what has happened after my resignation. They took 1,100,000 households and small businesses and gave them to hedge funds. And these people are being foreclosed and evicted now. Wow. And the money is going straight to the Cayman Islands. This is, the country is bleeding. All this money would have stayed in the country and we would have had the opportunity to invest ourselves. We wouldn't have given Santorini and Mykonos airports to a state-owned German company that takes all the profits of the Santorini airport. The Santorini airport is like a goose that lays the golden egg. Yeah. The golden egg goes to Frankfurt. It doesn't go to the Greeks anymore.
This is
so we would have been far better off even with a drachma.
Wow. So I'm just conscious of time.
Yeah.
So how do you think Mitsotakis is doing now in 2026 with all the deals he's doing with the Americans, with the gas works in Alexandroupoli?
It's a catastrophe for our country. A complete disaster for our country.
Yeah.
Look, firstly, we're not going to get anything out of this.
Yeah.
Even if they find huge quantities of natural gas, and let's say they get billions and billions of it, the Greek state will get nothing. If you look at the contracts, it's only a few million euros. Then, of course, the government will say, but we are going to get 21% of the profits. Not Exxon's profits. We'll get 21% of the profits of Exxon Hellas, which is a subsidiary of Exxon America.
Right.
Believe you me, Exxon Hellas will never have profits. Why? Because this is what multinationals do. So let's say that Exxon Hellas has 100 billion profits, right? What will happen is Exxon US is going to sell to Exxon Hellas a shitty piece of paper worth 100 billion, some kind of patent, IP, whatever. Huh? Then the profits of Exxon Hellas are wiped out and they're shifted to the United States, and the Greek state will get 21% of zero.
Wow.
So we'll get nothing. What we're going to get? The oil slick. When there is disaster in some of the there will be pollution.
Sure.
So our tourism is going to suffer, and also what we're getting is we're being railroaded away from clean energy, which is what we need in Greece. Anybody who knows anything about the Aegean knows that we have the Meltemia. These amazing, strong, constant northerly winds. Imagine if we had floating windmills in the Aegean. We would be producing huge quantities of free electricity that we would convert into, let's say, hydrogen. And we could become the powerhouse of the new green energy transition in there. What they're doing now with the Aegean, for instance, they are building, think about it, they're building terminals and pipelines.
Yep.
What for? Not for the natural gas that even if it's there, it will take 15 years before they pump it out. Who knows what? In 15 years, batteries and solar energy and so on is going to be so cheap that this will not be financially viable.
Sure.
But what they want to do is now, in the next 18 months, they want to bring LNG tankers from New Mexico and Texas, fracked LNG, all the way through the Atlantic, the Gibraltar Straits to Greece, and then pump it through the Greek pipelines to Ukraine, which is next to the cheapest and most plentiful natural gas there is of the Russians. So essentially, we are being used to sell American fracked, awful fossil fuels at huge environmental cost in order to continue the war in Ukraine and turn our country into a target of Putin. It is a disaster.
Wow. Okay.
And people are being sold that lie that we're going to be billionaires. We're not. We're not going to see anything. Yeah. We're going to see the costs. We're going to see the environmental damage. Our tourist industry is going to suffer. We're going to be targeted by Putin, and Greece is going to be another colony.
So your outlook on the position of Greece now, I mean, there was a very clear point post-crisis where I felt that the narrative started to change. And I feel as though it changed because they started to realize that if we keep bad-mouthing Greece and if we keep talking shit about Greece, there's not going to be any investment in it. Let's start changing the narrative about this. Has Greece recovered in any respect, in reality, from your perspective, in terms of the debt crisis? And where are we now in reality from your perspective?
Greece is the greatest paradox in the history of the global political economy. If you're a financier, you love Greece. Greece is the goose that lays the golden eggs. Why? Let's say you have a hedge fund and you go to Greece and you buy non-performing loans, mortgages that are, not being serviced because people are impecunious. You buy it for 5-6% of face value. So a mortgage of 100,000, you get it for 5,000-6,000. Now that has collateral attached to it, some kind of home or shop or something that used to be worth 200,000, thus the loan of 100,000, but that's worth, let's say, 80,000. You've paid 5,000-6,000, and you auction it off, you can get 80,000.
Yep.
And now where else in the world can you get that kind of rate of return? Nowhere. So you love it. All right? If you buy Greek government bonds, the Greek state is bankrupt. We owe 400 billion. Our national income is 225. Okay? But the European Central Bank guarantees you that it will buy off you Greek bonds. So do you give a damn that Greece is bankrupt? You don't, because you have a safe, secondary market purchaser. So you buy it.
Right.
And you get a spread over the bond. So, it's compared to buying German government bond, the Greek government bond gives you a higher return. So you love Greece. You love the private sector of Greece, the non-performing loans. You love the public sector of Greece. You go around the world and you say, Greece is a success story, fantastic. Now, if you're a Greek, 20% of the Greeks have never been wealthier than they are now, 20% of the Greeks. Because if you own 2 or 3 apartments, rents and prices have gone through the roof. Why? Because we have an influx of foreigners, people from Ukraine, from Turkey, from China. They get a Schengen visa, so can they live in Paris, not in Greece. They buy a block of flats, they turn it into an Airbnb. The money doesn't go to Greece at all. So, American tourists stay in that apartment. The money goes from the American bank account to the German bank account of the Ukrainian. It doesn't go through Greece. Okay? But if you are one of the owners of this, or if you own apartments because of the increase in demand, so if you're a rentier, you're doing well. If you're a member of the 80% of the population, you've never been more poor than you are now.
Right.
So 80% of our brethren in Greece are worse off today than they were in 2015 or 2010.
Wow.
We have a fall of 44%. Think about it. Compared to 2009, the median purchasing power of a family is 44% down.
Wow.
That's a disaster. That's why doctors are leaving.
Yeah.
Teachers are leaving. We have a continued migration is a gigantic problem in Greece. Not because of the foreigners who are coming, but because of the Greeks who are leaving.
Yeah. This brain
So
drain.
I thought they were
Greece is not
coming back,
viable.
though.
The reality is we are the golden boys and girls of the international financial sector. They love us, and our population, the country is desertifying. It's becoming a desert.
Right. I want to ask you about the role that satire plays in politics.
Sure.
You've been the butt of a lot of things on shows like Radio Villa and all that sort of thing. What role does satire play in presenting all of this stuff to the public and to the community? They seem to me to hold a great deal of power.
Of course.
In Greece.
Of course. Not only in Greece. During the junta, it was humor that kept us alive. The greatest resistance to the dictators were all the jokes that were being told about them, whether they were told in the cafeteria or by stand-up comics. When I see myself being satirized, as long as it's clever and it's not vulgar, it doesn't matter even if they just laugh at me. It's fantastic. I think that it's part of the human spirit, it's part of democracy, and it's great resistance. When I lived in Britain under Thatcher, whom I loathed and admired at the same time, I admired her for the way in which she was pursuing the class war against the working class. I wish that we of the left had somebody like Thatcher doing the class war in reverse. The only people that stood up to Thatcher back then were the comics.
Yeah.
British stand-up comedians. So, satire is the soul of the earth. It's without it, people talk about a lot about AI. AI cannot do satire well, and never will be able to, because only the human spirit that can feel simultaneously the pain and the laughter.
Yeah. When you see it, though, do you laugh? Like
If it's funny, I laugh my head off. I remember when I became minister, the only example of good German humor was a video that somebody made of poking fun at me called V for Varoufakis. I don't know whether you saw that.
I think I did, actually.
V for Varoufakis. Go on, because it's such great satire.
Yeah.
I mean, people came to my office when I was minister, my people, and said, "Oh, look at that bastard, what he did to it." I said, "What do you mean? He's fantastic. Let's publicize that. This is great fun."
Yeah, that's brilliant.
Good stuff.
Look,
I just want to touch on the current environment that's happening around in the world with US, Israel, bombing Iran. What's your view on this? And more importantly, why is America getting involved and what are they getting out of this? What's the benefit to them?
The American political economy, since the Second World War, is based on the military-industrial complex. Their engine of growth is the $1.5 trillion that they spend on weaponry. Now, this is what I call military Keynesianism. That is, the state issues debt, borrows money in order to spend on armaments as a way of creating. If you think about it, all the universities, all the big tech, they all came out of the military-industrial complex. The internet came out of the military-industrial complex. The microchip came out of the military-industrial complex. It is the engine of growth. The problem with military Keynesianism is when you spend all this money on weaponry, on ammunition, on missiles, on cruise, Pershing, and all that.
You need a war.
You need, at some point, the warehouses will be full.
Yes.
And you need to empty them. That's why they have a war every year. They start with Korea, they go to Vietnam, they have coup d'etats left, right, and center. They invade Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Syria. I mean, Trump had 7 wars in 12 months. They need to keep doing that. During the first Gulf War, I think that was quite pertinent. Remember, the first Gulf War was Bush, the father. And, they invaded through Saudi Arabia to take Kuwait back and so on. And at some point, there was an armistice. Saddam Hussein surrendered. And there was a cessation of hostilities. You know that for 4 days, the American Air Force was bombing the desert after that in order to restock.
Wow.
To get rid of the inventory. So that's what the Americans do. This is not Trump. What is new is the nakedness of the narrative. All the other American presidents were trying to bathe their warmongering in the warm light of international law, of human rights. Clinton was bombing Sudan to save the Sudanese. Trump doesn't have any compunction. He says, I'm going to bomb them because I like it.
This is the discussion we had recently.
I'm going to take Maduro out because I feel like it, and because I have the power, and I want you to celebrate me. And by the way, I want Greenland from Denmark.
Yeah.
And next he will want Tasmania. And this is the only silver lining about Trump: the fact that he doesn't care about what we think about him. Yeah. But regarding Iran and what's happening now, this is a very nasty turn of events, because the one good thing about Trump, the only good thing I can think about him, was that he was not interested in regime change up until now.
Last week. Or a few weeks ago, actually.
Think about it. In his first term, he didn't start a single war. And indeed, I have it on good authority that he prevented the bombing of Iran. He was woken up in the middle of the night. His neocons within the Pentagon and the State Department had started the process of bombing. The planes were flying. And he got up in the middle of the night and he stopped them. He turned them back. That was during his first term. In this second term, it is clear that Netanyahu has something on him. Because Netanyahu's project has always been to drag the United States into a war of choice against Iran. And this was also part of the Pentagon. Wesley Clark, who was the chief of staff of George W. Bush, in 2002 had very clearly stated in an interview that we're going to destabilize 7 countries. And he started with Iraq, which happened in a year after. And then he talked about Sudan, Libya, Syria, and so on. And the 7th country was Iran.
Yes.
And Trump mentioned Wesley Clark twice in his election campaign in 2016, saying, I'm being elected in order to stop that madness. And you can see that now he's been co-opted in that madness. I have no doubt that he didn't do this gladly. Netanyahu must have something on him. And in the end, Netanyahu is the president of the United States, the de facto president of the United States now.
Wow.
Because what's happening in Iran is not in the interest of the United States. It's not in the interest of Americans. Americans are suffering as a result of that. Petrol prices are going through the roof. If you are a MAGA blue-collar worker that voted for Trump, you're suffering because you are driving an SUV, I should say, and you're struggling to make ends meet because these people are not well off.
Yep.
These are the people who elected him. And you have to travel long distances to go to a shitty job, work for a pitiful wage, and pay these petrol prices. And I think that Trump knows that. This is why I'm saying that it is impossible for me to understand why he's doing this unless people have something on him.
Yeah.
So what do you think
Netanyahu.
What do you think Netanyahu has on Trump?
I don't know. But what I do know
is it related to Epstein, anything like that?
Could be.
Possibly.
But I can tell you that Mitsotakis, since we are Greeks, the reason why he's still prime minister and he's controlled his cabinet completely is he's using Israeli-sourced software to keep tabs on everyone, including the military. We know that. He's been outed. Yeah, there was even a parliamentary inquiry. He admitted that he was keeping tabs on the leader of PASOK, Androulakis, on his own ministers.
Actually, you're right.
It's out with Israeli technology.
Wow. Okay.
And this is consistent as well. Like we've seen John Kiriakou in his podcast talking about just how ingrained Israeli intelligence is everywhere and the cooperation. The geopolitical landscape nowadays is unbelievable.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And what we as citizens, and whatnot, are willing to accept in this day and age, I feel the bar has been reset in some ways.
And this is important for us Greeks because we talked about Turkey. We talked about the threat. Since 1821, we live under the threat of a Turkish regime, whichever one, not just Erdogan, every Turkish regime feeling at moments of grief, moments when they feel unstable or destabilized for their own reasons, internal reasons. Every Turkish government is, standing on shaky ground because of the political economy of Turkey. Every time things get bad for a Turkish government, they start the tensions with Greece because this is what unites their population. So we live under that. And our greatest defender is not the United States. We saw this in 1974. They took the side of Turkey. That's why Cyprus was invaded.
Yes.
Okay, the Sixth Fleet took the side of Turkey. They stopped the Greek phantoms from taking off.
Really?
Absolutely. And they banned us from using the weapons they sold us. We know that. And we know that if there is another tension of the sort, the Americans will always take the side of Turkey because Turkey is strategically more important than Greece. If you look at the map of that particular part of the world. So what is our greatest defender? It's international law. When we go to the United Nations, we argue about, we talk about the occupied territories of Cyprus, the northern Cyprus part. We appeal to international law that this was it's an illegal occupation and so on. I was talking to Anwar Ibrahim, the Prime Minister of Malaysia. He invited me some time ago, and to talk about other things. And at some point he said, "What is your government doing with Israel, having this strategic lovey-dovey alliance with them? What got into them? They come to us and they seek support in the United Nations over the occupied territories of Cyprus. And they go into bed with a government of Netanyahu that is annexing, effectively, the occupied territories of the Palestinians. You can't have it both ways. You can ask the international community, international law, to support your claims of illegality of what the Turks are doing. And at the same time, be a strategic partner of the one rogue nation, state,
yes,
that is trashing international law, committing genocide, and taking over anybody's territory that they feel like. So essentially, we have this alliance, strategic alliance with Israel. By the way, if Turkey, let's say they move to grab Castellorizo or Rhodes, does anyone really think that the Israeli army is going to move against Turkey? Never. Netanyahu and Erdogan, they may hate each other, they will always find some accommodation, and we are going to be left holding the baby on our own. So we have a strategic alliance with Israel, which is useless militarily and detrimental to our international position.
Wow. Doesn't seem like there's a win-win there, does it?
No, absolutely not.
Well, just one last question. So I understand now that Cyprus got bombed recently by Iran.
No, it wasn't.
Akrotiri.
Akrotiri is not Cyprus.
Okay.
You remember that Akrotiri in 1960-61 was British sovereign territory. Okay? That is a travesty.
So why are Greece sending planes and warships to Cyprus and the French?
Well, it's all a show. I mean, as if the Greek... anyway, these drones are not particularly lethal. Yeah. They are not particularly threatening. I think that Macron and Mitsotakis are simply sending these ships in order to present themselves as strongmen domestically. It's domestic politics. We shouldn't, buy that lie.
Do you see this escalating at all? Do you see World War III? Or how close are we to World War III?
I don't even want to conceptualize it. People in the know, like my friend Jeff Sachs and John Mishheimer, they tell me that we are closer to nuclear war than we have ever been, even compared to the Cuban Missile Crisis in the 1960s. We have essentially run out of all the treaties between Russia and America, the START treaties, the ballistic missile treaties, the anti-space nuclear weapon treaty. All these treaties are now gone. So effectively, we have chaos. We just have escalation. But my worry is that even if that doesn't happen, and I hope it doesn't happen, we have effectively surrendered to a wave of warmongering, which is, take the Germans for instance, right? I mean, one of the most frequently downloaded app in Germany as we speak is one that helps you find your nearest bunker.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, we're talking about that kind of insanity.
Wow.
As if Putin is going to invade Germany. It's not going to happen. But this is functional to the interests of Rheinmetall. Rheinmetall is the company that produces tanks. Because Volkswagen hasn't invested for 20 years in cars, so they produce rubbish cars. They cannot compete with BYD. They can't compete with Tesla. So they are passing whole production lines to Rheinmetall to make Leopard tanks, which are crap. I mean, the Ukrainians don't want them.
Right.
Okay? But we Greeks are forced to buy them in order to keep German workers employed. But in order to convince us and the Germans that we need more tanks, they have to spread through warmongering the fear of a non-existent war. But the more you do that, the nearer you get to actually a self-fulfilling prophecy. Remember Laios? the son of Idippodas, the father of Idippodas.
Yep.
And why did he die? Because the oracle prognosticated that his son would kill him. So when his wife had a son, he ordered the shepherd to take the boy and kill it. The shepherd spared the child. The child grew up, didn't know that Laios was his father, met him, and there was a moment of road rage. Their chariots met at some intersection, killed his dad. So his dad died because he believed that he would die at the hand of... So similarly, we may be creating the circumstances for war by simply, through prophecy, that there's going to be a war. A self-fulfilling prophecy.
Wow. That's not a nice note to end.
I brought in a bit of ancient Greek tragedy.
You did. Had to end it well.
We always like a bit of that. It's not a nice way to end, obviously, with all of this. But, Yanni, I mean, we could be talking for the next 3 weeks. There's so many more things that we'd love to ask you about. We hope that you'll come back onto the show at some point. We do need to let him go because he has a flight to catch.
Yes.
Yanni, thank you so much for joining us on Ouzo Talk. It's been an absolute honour to have you here.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, ouzotalk@outlook.com is the email. Follow us on social media at Ouzo Talk and at Ouzo_talk. Also on Instagram. Nika Thanasiou, Yanis Varoufakis. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
Ouzo Talk is produced, written and presented by Tom Skolarikis and Nika Thanasiou. Our theme music is written and played by Peter Apostolidis, with additional music from George Kalapidis and Bouzouki legend Thanasis Polykadriotis.
Ακολουθήστε μας στο Soundees, στο Spotify, στο Apple Podcasts και στο Google Podcasts.